goal at Girl Investors is to help you become smarter, better investors. The book we review in this video does just that. In the Little Book of Behavioral Investing by James Montier, he suggests that his most important lesson of all is that people tend to recognize cognitive biases in others rather than recognize that we ourselves are prone to cognitive biases. So even though biases seem to affect us all, we all seem to have a bias blind spot. This bias blind spot can cost us money in investing. So in this video, we will talk about 10 destructive behavioral biases and common mental mistakes that the author has seen professional investors make. There are more than 10 discussed in the video, but these are simply the ones that I am particularly interested in and that I think you should know about. So by the end of this video, you will learn to recognize mental pitfalls and protect your portfolio. I really enjoyed making this video for you. If this topic sounds good to you, then hit the like button and please keep watching. Success in investing doesn't correlate with IQ once you're above the level of 100. Once you have ordinary intelligence, what you need is the temperament to control the urges that get other people into trouble in investing. Warren Buffett. In our last video, we talked about reflexive versus reflective reasoning. In Montier's book, he uses a Star Trek analogy to make the same point. The character Spock from Star Trek is a reflective, logical, rational, and unemotional character. His is more of a logical way of processing information, if you will. On the other hand, McCoy is reflexive, emotional, and reactive. This type of reasoning is sort of like the default option that makes decisions based on familiarity, similarity, and proximity. Which one are you? Leave a comment below and tell us why you think you're either Spock or McCoy. So let's see if you're right about whether you think you are more logical like Spock or if you're more instinctive like McCoy. So can you answer this brain teaser, which is part of the cognitive reflection task or CRT? A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Pause this video and see if you come up with the right answer. Okay, we're back. So if you're like most people, you will answer 10 cents. That answer is wrong. People who answer 10 cents are trusting their instincts instead of evaluating the problem logically. Arriving at the correct answer requires logical, mathematical reasoning. So here's one way to answer the question. A ball plus $1 equals $1.10. A ball plus $1 here represents the bat. So if you follow simple algebra to solve for ball, you will arrive at 5 cents. Many people, including experts and regular people alike, seem to think that they're more like Spock. But in practice, we tend to trust our initial emotional reactions. And there is an evolutionary survival basis for this, for thinking with our emotions. But when it comes to investing, we need to tap into our inner Spock. And we should slow down our information processing. Conditions that increase Mccoylike thinking include when the problem is ill-structured and complex, when information is incomplete, ambiguous, and changing, when the goals are ill-defined, shifting, or competing, when the stress is high because either time constraints or high stakes are involved, and when decisions rely upon an interaction with others. Essentially, a lot of situations influence us to think like McCoy, so we have to be extra vigilant. So now let's get into our top 10 behavioral bias list from this book. Number 10, the power of pre-commitment. Investors should follow the 7 Ps. Perfect planning to prevent piss-poor performance. This means that we should plan our investments when we are in a Spock-like logical state of mind. Calmly, slowly, deliberately. Instill a process and commit to it. One way that I personally use the power of pre-commitment is to install stop losses on any stock positions I have. Additionally, when I place a market order, I will impose limits on what I'm willing to pay for a particular stock. And I'm sure to make these decisions when I'm in a calm and unemotional state. And another tactic I use is to simply dollar cost average and purchase index funds or ETFs in regular intervals. So something I've decided far in advance. So I'm self-aware enough to understand my temperament, and I have measures to guard against mindless investing. Number 9, the illusion of control. Humans tend to overrate their abilities. This illusion is even more pervasive when you have lots of choices available, when you have early success at the task that you're undertaking is a familiar one, you have a lot of information available to you, and you have a high personal involvement. Guess what? This looks like investing. There are lots of stock in the market ready for purchase. There's no shortage of information, but it doesn't mean that we have control over the information. So never forget that. Skepticism is the chastity of the intellect, and it is shameful to surrender it too soon or to the first comer. George Santayana. Number 8, careful with optimism in investing. Be optimistic. Look at the bright side, right? Well, let's acknowledge that optimists seem to cope better and survive longer than pessimists do when they encounter bad news, such as sickness. Optimism is actually a great life strategy. But in investing, we have to be careful with optimism. Ben Graham, the renowned investor, noted that losses to investors came from buying low-quality stocks during times of optimal business conditions. Prosperity when times are good is not synonymous with safe stock picking. The best investors ask themselves, why shouldn't I own this stock rather than why should I own it? There are some people who see the world as it actually is, and that can sometimes become very depressing, clinically depressing. I don't wish to be depressed, but I also do not want to be under any illusions or Pollyanna-ish. The author suggests that it's best to be clinically depressed while investing and happy or deluded when you're at home. Personally, I choose to be a realist. Never ask a barber if you need a haircut. Warren Buffett. Number 7, self-serving bias. People are prone to act in ways that are self-serving. People have agendas, don't they? I actually cut my own hair, which I learned by the power of YouTube. So just like you, I learned so much from other content creators on this platform, and that saves me money. So it's not easy to be unbiased though, especially when it comes to our interests. The author gave an example in the book about accounting auditors who were assigned 5 different auditing cases, which included some situations that had financial shenanigans. Some auditors were told that they work for the company, and the rest were told that they work for investors who are evaluating the company. Auditors who were told that they were working for the company were 31% more likely to accept these creative, quote-unquote, accounting tactics than those who were not working for the company. So try to be careful when you evaluate equity research. Their research reports tend to conform to 3 self-serving biases. 1, all news is good news, meaning bad news can always get better. 2, everything is always cheap, meaning just make up new valuation methodologies. And 3, assertion trumps evidence. Never let the facts get in the way of a good story. The most fascinating part of this is that equity research reports can be expensive. So these might not really be the best use of your money. I do admit though that I read equity research reports quite frequently though. Number 6, confidence bias. This bias particularly bothers me. People tend to gravitate towards people, especially confident investment advisors. Initially, confident people are more likable and they generate more business. Over time, though, more and more people will avoid the overconfident people who were wrong previously. I call these people who learn from their mistakes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what you believe, the power of confidence is so compelling that many excuse a poor track record if something was told to them confidently. To add to this power, in the presence of a confident expert, however, our brains tend to switch off. Neuroscientists noted that in the presence of experts, subjects' brain activity that correlated with valuation and probability weighting weakened significantly. So we sort of let the expert tell us what to do, and our brain switches off. I think this is quite dangerous, if you ask me. I find this next point most fascinating. Men tend to be afflicted with overconfidence more than women. So while women trade less than men, they ended up with higher net returns than men. Men tended to trade more, and their net returns were diminished by the costs of trading. So Thomas Chamorro Premuzic explores overconfidence even more in his book, Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders? Maybe we should review it on girl investors in a future video. The takeaway is that we should be aware of overconfidence creep and take note of whose advice we take. Some of the worst business decisions that I have seen are those with future projections and discounts back to the present. Charlie Munger. Number 5, the folly of forecasting. If you don't know, that is a reference to discounted cash flow analysis. Investment analysts like to forecast everything from earnings to a future target stock price. Unfortunately, they are more wrong than they are right. You might be better off tossing a coin. Philip Tetlock studied forecasters and outlined some of the excuses that analysts make when they're wrong. 1. The if only defense. If only the Federal Reserve had raised rates, then the predictions would have been true. Effectively, the experts claimed that they would have been correct if only their advice had been followed. Number 2, the ceteris paribus defense. Something outside of the model of analysis occurred which invalidated the forecast, therefore it isn't my fault. Number 3, the I was almost right defense. Although the predicted outcome didn't occur, it almost did. The it just hasn't happened yet defense. I wasn't wrong, it just hasn't occurred. The single prediction defense. You can't judge me by the performance of a single forecast. This one tends to be the most popular. I don't want to be judgmental because I suppose we all try to explain why we might have been wrong at times, but I'm a little less forgiving when it involves my money. So be careful when making decisions off of forecasts. The author, Montier, provides good advice. The key to dealing with the future lies in knowing where you are, even if you can't know precisely where you are going. Knowing where you are in a cycle and what that implies for the future is different from predicting the timing, extent, and shape of the cyclical move. This is an interesting way of investing without being overconfident or pretending that you know what the future will be, and it thus offers you a different perspective or worldview. And as John Maynard Keynes has said, I'd prefer to be approximately right rather than precisely wrong. Number 4, anchoring. People keep using forecasts because when they are given a number, they tend to cling to it. This trait is known as anchoring. We discussed anchoring in one of our previous videos titled Your Deceptive Mind by Stephen Novella, and I'll leave a link to it in the description box below. So you can imagine what happens when investors read a forecast that has a particular price target. Their mind is now subconsciously anchored to that value, even if it is grossly incorrect. Be aware of the subconscious tendency to anchor. I'm not immune to this. I am anchored every day to prices. The prices for food, for clothing, for vehicles, or real estate. I have a ballpark value in my mind about what something should be priced at because I saw the price in the past or that it was suggested to me. Knowing the value of something can be a good thing, or it can be dangerous. Question your anchors. Number 3, information overload. If you have spent any time on Twitter, you will notice that it seems like people are addicted to information. I often feel like the more information I have, the less I truly know and the more disconnected I become from reality. This might sound contradictory, but it is my lived experience. The author reminds us that more information is not necessarily better, and as investors, we need to learn to parse out the signal from the noise. And I'm still learning how to do this myself. I definitely get pulled into information overload, and then I go down a rabbit hole, and then I just throw my hands up in the air and exclaim that I just can't take any more information. In reality, I did it to myself. Warren Buffett is an investor who does not overcomplicate things. He does not discuss earnings outlook over the next quarter or consult an overabundance of information when he makes an investment decision. Rather, he just tries to buy businesses with good to superb underlying economics, run by a good management team, and then buys them at sensible prices. Number 2, the sunk cost fallacy. Sometimes investors and the rest of us hesitate to change their course of action and become very conservative. One reason is the sunk cost fallacy. This is when we have a tendency to allow our past unrecoverable expenses to inform our current decisions. What I mean by that is we hang on to our views or positions far too long because of the effort and time that we invested in coming up with these decisions in the first place. So one way to address the sunk cost fallacy is to take an evidence-based approach. Question your assumptions, question if you still believe your assumptions to be true, ask if you missed anything, and then based on your answers, update your recommendations and position. In summary, when the facts change your mind. And now we're down to the last one. Number 1, storytelling. Human beings love stories. I love stories. In fact, we love stories so much that we will believe a story more than actual evidence. For example, participants who know the base rate cure for a drug, suppose the base rate cure is 90%, we will still rate the drug as ineffective or even dangerous if we are told a negative story about one patient's experience with the drug. People simply tend to ignore the facts and believe the story. Another example is the story of price. When participants were given a $10 bottle of wine and a $90 bottle of wine, they rated the more expensive bottle of wine as better. The only thing is, they were exactly the same bottle of wine. People were misled by the story of price of the wine. We can be so easy to deceive. Thinking about our own biases, not just those that we observe in others, is an important way to prevent errors in judgment. Let's recap what we talked about in this video. We discussed the power of pre-commitment, the illusion of control, optimism in investing, the self-serving bias, the confidence bias, the folly of forecasting, anchoring, information overload, the sunk cost fallacy, and storytelling. James Montier's book is rich with examples and illustrations of the concepts he introduces to us. Yet this video was only a brief snapshot of some of the ones I found interesting. Therefore, I highly recommend that you study this book for a more complete picture and to learn about other concepts. Leave a comment below on what you did or didn't find interesting. Is there a book out there that you would like us to review? Tell us in the comment section so we can put it on our list. If you learned something, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in our next video.